Renata Jackson.
How do you do, Rabbi Mark?
It's so great to see you, and it's great to be together.
It's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to be here with you.
We are getting ready for Shavuot, and I posed to Renata Jackson, who is not only a Temple member, but she is a teacher, a professor of film studies at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts here in Winston-Salem. And we love to draw on you for your knowledge and experience. And I said,
I love that you do.
Well, it's an honor. So I talked with you about the idea that hope and resiliency are themes that we're working with as we're getting ready for Shavuot, and in particular in light of COVID-19, and that was going to be an important thing for us to focus on. And you recommended the movie of?
Seabiscuit.
Why?
So this is a film that absolutely deals with hope and resilience. It's an underdog story. It's a David and Goliath story, and in fact, I hope that the membership has actually already watched the movie, because we were talking before that there might actually be some spoilers here.
Yes, thank you. There will be spoiler alerts. So if you've not seen Seabiscuit, and this is the 2003 movie that came out.
Right.
Which I can make sure the technology works. Okay, we're working.
Yeah. So it's a story about three broken men and a horse, all of whom are who have suffered losses and who come back and not only are resilient but are also triumphant. And so it's based on a true story. Seabiscuit was a racehorse during the depths of the Great Depression, and the film is based on a book by Lauren Hillebrand, who wrote this nonfiction novel, I guess is what you call it, about Seabiscuit, who was this incredible underdog story that really kind of reflected the kind of struggles that people were feeling during the depths of the Great Depression, right? People who had also suffered many losses, right? Loss of their homes, of their jobs, of their livelihood, and of their hopes. And so here was this horse, as Lauren Hillebrand describes him, who was as broken as the nation. And he was this, amazing underdog story that was also a comeback kid story as well, because the horse had suffered a fractured leg. The rider, the Seabiscuit's jockey, had suffered a fractured leg, and the horse had a ruptured ligament. So they never thought either of them would ever be able to ride or race again, and they did, and they were triumphant. And then the David and Goliath story, that's the classic underdog story.
So I think we as humanity love an underdog story.
We do.
And we as Jews are, hello, King David was ours.
Yeah.
And the book of Ruth is the total experience of, here this family that comes from the house of bread, Beit Lechem. There's a famine in the land. They go to Moab, which is actually their enemy, and there Naomi's husband dies. Her two sons die. Her daughters-in-law now need to decide what to do. Orpah decides to go back to her family home, and Ruth says, wherever you go, I go. Your people will be my people, your God, my God, wherever you... All of that, I'm going to stay with you through all of this. And what's very significant at the end of the book of Ruth is we get the lineage that Ruth is the ancestor of David.
Huh.
So David comes from a very difficult story, from a very difficult time. And that all of us, we are all the underdogs, so to speak.
Yeah.
We're not all going to be... And we might think, we're not all going to be Titans, and we think, I'm not going to be David. Actually, what David comes from is pretty tough times.
Yeah. So I saw all these parallels, and we can see Seabiscuit as kind of this allegory of these stories of losses, characters who have suffered losses. Charles Howard loses his son and his wife, who's the owner of Seabiscuit. Loses his son, and his wife leaves him. And then there's the trainer, Tom Smith, who during the Depression loses his livelihood as well. And then there's Red Pollard, who was the jockey who was abandoned by his family when he was 15 or 16 years old. So he lost his family, he lost his home, as everybody did, during the Great Depression. He lost sight in his one eye. And then there's Seabiscuit, who was this small horse who, as a colt, its previous owner had given up on him. And then it was trained to race against better horses and lose. So there was that quote that you and I both really liked, that this colt just needs to learn to be a horse again.
And finding himself.
Yes.
What's about him, not about what other people are making him to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So here's this story that takes place in the Great Depression. That becomes, a story of hope and inspiration for a nation. It was the match race in 1938. The owner of the other horse that Seabiscuit rode against, the horse was War Admiral, and Riddle was the name of the owner. Riddle says, enough of this David and Goliath nonsense, because he doesn't want to have to race his War Admiral against Seabiscuit. The film came out in 2003, which was just 2 years after 9/11.
That's right.
The book was published in 2001. So I also felt that the film, when it came out, it was really timely. It was talking about a period when we were suffering through the Great Depression, and now during this period of pandemic, it seems kind of timely too, because people are, again, many people are out of work. So.
And looking for what to do. And I think one of the things that has come out for us in this time period where we are right now, just to pull back on that quote of what Tom Smith, the trainer, says, when he says they've got him so screwed up running in circles, he just needs to be a horse again. That our lives, look, we did not want COVID-19. It is awful what has happened, the loss of life, the disruption of life, and yet this moment is calling us to look at what we've been doing and what can we assess and actually leave behind and say, those weren't good behaviors, and we need to find out what is important to us right now and pursue that so that we can become our fullest self, so to speak.
Speaking of good behaviors, the quote that I love the most from this film is what Tom Smith first says to Charles Howard when Howard meets Smith for the first time. And Tom Smith has saved a horse from being shot because its leg was broken. And Charles Howard asks him, why are you healing him if he won't be able to race again? And he says, well, a horse is good for something. You don't throw a life away just because it's banged up a little.
That's right.
So you don't throw a whole life away just because he's banged up a little, is this amazing sentiment of compassion and also second chances, which is, again, what all of these men and the horse were given.
Yes. Right? And that is the kernel or the seed of hope. That, okay, so life has got us beat down. Okay, you're not going to throw the whole thing out. Which is a refrain that I've been returning to as we think about what does this mean for us as Jews? What does it mean for the Jewish community, COVID-19? And when you think about the destruction of the Second Temple, right, and literally our sanctuary was destroyed. Huge loss of life. And that the rabbis stood up and said, okay, we're not done here.
Right.
We actually are going to work with you. We're not going to throw this whole experiment life of Judaism out. We're going to carry on and keep working. And so that line is so applicable for us.
Yeah, absolutely. There was that other quote that spoke to both of us, and that was a line that David McCullough says,
at the beginning with the narration. Yep.
And he talks about, around the time that the assembly line was invented and with automation and piecemeal work, it was the beginning and the end of imagination all at the same time. Did you want to?
It's such a poignant line, right? When you think about automation and what's happening, And when he says that, this is the beginning and end of imagination. And I couldn't help but think about our world today and the idea that, look, there's so much that's been truncated now because of what's going on. And it feels like the end of a lot of things, but it's also the beginning of something. And how do we work with that chance to both recognize with sadness in the morning of, okay, this doesn't exist anymore. So now what?
Losses. Yeah.
Right? There's real losses in that, both physical and emotional.
Yeah.
But it's also the beginning of something, which opens the door
to innovation.
To innovation.
Yeah.
And
what ingenuity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, which is why we're sitting here right now.
Yes.
Right, because normally we would be doing something on Thursday night for Shavuot, and I probably would have roped you in to do something with our group, but now, and thank God the weather is good because we can be outside, which is the
lovely.
best way to do it.
Absolutely.
Right, we don't want to be in a shared space if we don't have to be, and so okay, what do we do with what we're given? And we're sitting. I like the space. This is our journey sculpture.
Exactly.
It happens to be shady in this part right now.
It's perfect.
But our sculpture that was done by Dempsey Calhoun, a local artist who works with scrap metal. Right, so most of what this is all scrap
it's
and recycled. And if you look at how it's done, it's very solid and strong, and it's also very fragmented and barely holding on at times, because that's the journey of life.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, I think, why this film, this character of Seabiscuit speaks to us, because it's an underdog story. People who everybody understands struggles, right? And works of art, whether they're fiction or they're based on a true story, they speak to us because they resonate with us, because they speak to the human condition, to human experience, and that's what this story is all about. It's a story about flawed human beings, broken human beings, and of course helping one another, helping heal one another, and not just being resilient, but being triumphant in the end.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's a beautiful message for us to close on.
Great.
May this Shavuot be one that reminds us of what's possible.
Amen.
Of where we can go in life, especially when things are not as we had planned or had wanted. So may it be a Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Today happens to be the first day of the month of Sivan, so Chodesh Tov. It should be
Tov.
a good month, and it's also a new week, so Shavuot Tov.
Shavuot Tov.
A lot of goodness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.